No, it's not okay. Everybody needs an attorney when they're purchasing property. There are no exceptions. A developer, it's even more important because a developer has a great responsibility in terms of completing the development. And there are times where it can't be completed for one reason or the other. You have put a down payment. Okay, yes, the agreement may say how the monies are to go at the end if you cannot complete. For you to basically access a refund, it's going to be more difficult for you to do so on your own. If there's any reason for the sale to fall through, your interest is going to be protected because if a deposit has been paid and the agreement stamped, the developer's attorney is going to have to return it to the purchaser. The purchaser is then going to have to go to obtain a refund from the Ministry of Finance because the monies have already been paid out to the government. For a purchaser who is living overseas to get that back, it would be a nightmare. They wouldn't know where to start.
Hello, Throp family, and welcome back to another video podcast episode. If this is your first time visiting, a special welcome to you. My name is Winthrop Wellington, and I am your host of On Deck with Throp, where we have meaningful conversations with people from all over the world, all about Jamaica. And today we have a very special guest with us who's been my family's attorney for basically since I moved here. I've been here 16 years, so definitely over 10 years. And it is such an honor and pleasure for me to welcome Ms. Dawn Gray to the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you taking the time. And to start with, as I mentioned, you are a real estate lawyer and you have been our counsel for quite a number of years. But to start off with, just want to get a little bit of a background on yourself, and if you would just briefly introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Dawn Gray. I am an attorney as well as a mediator, and I'm also a notary public. And I have been in practice for 26 years. I am not Jamaican born. I was born in Canada and ended back here when I was 4. And then I stayed until I was 16 and returned to Canada.
Okay.
And there I met my husband and returned with him. And I have been here ever since.
Okay.
So that's basically the background. I grew up in Kingston and ended up in Sablamar,
Okay.
which is very close to Negril, but and I have adapted very well coming from Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's basically my background.
I didn't know that. That's the first time.
Cool. Because Canada, I'm born there, but I am Jamaican through and through. My parents are Jamaican, and but it's also Canada was helpful to me for educational purposes, etc. So I can't not say I can't abandon it altogether.
Right.
So that's
and did you always know that you wanted to be an attorney growing up?
I think so. Yes. Okay. It was I was intrigued with the power of argument. And not just the power of argument, but the ability to back your arguments with facts. Mm-hmm. And, I enjoyed courses such as history and sociology because I was able to, support everything that I said. And as you know, in the legal area, you have to be able, especially in court, you have to be able to state the facts and apply the evidence to the facts, the law to the facts. And as a result of that, I basically saw where this is the area I wanted to be in. I like to make my arguments and I like to have them supported. And that was what drew me into the legal area.
I see.
So.
And can you talk to us a little about the process of becoming an attorney in Jamaica? Because I know there are a lot of young people who will watch this and they want to get an understanding of what that process is like in terms of schooling and tests that you have to pass. And then also, if you can speak about, say, an attorney who's practicing maybe in Canada or maybe in the United States and would like to move over to here in Jamaica.
Okay. All right. So basically, the thing is, I didn't do all my studying in Jamaica per se. I did it through correspondence. So what I did, I have a degree from the University of Toronto in poli-sci. And just to sort of answer your question simultaneously with the first part of the question, the poli-sci degree, right? I obtained that, and then when I returned to Jamaica, I basically did the correspondence course, and that was with the University of London. And then I went to law school for 2 years. So basically the studying period was 8 years, or is 8 years, because you have the undergraduate. Now in Jamaica, if you're studying you're in Jamaica and you are a student here, you would basically attend the University of the West Indies or UTech, and you would do the Bachelor of Laws degree, and then you would go straight into law school, which is a 2-year program. So that's it in a nutshell as to the time that it takes for obtaining the law degree.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then what kind of exams would you have to take? Like, is there so two questions? Like, if you're moving over from the States to Jamaica.
Okay, so when you say moving over to the States, you mean you're already qualified as counsel in the States?
That's correct.
Right. So you would just simply come here and do a 6-month course with the Law School of Jamaica, the Norman Manley Law School. It's a 6-month course. And it's very intense.
Okay, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And would you have to pass the bar here?
Oh, yeah. Well, we don't. Yes, you would have to. Basically, the 6-month course, once you complete it successfully, you're qualified to practice.
See. Okay.
Right. So Norman Manley, you go through a number of courses and for 2 years, and you do the 2-year, you're qualified to practice. So whereas the US has a bar exam per se, you finish law school, then you have to do a bar exam. We don't have a bar exam. Once you complete the Norman Manley Law School, and you will obtain your certificate and you're able to practice.
I understand. Okay, got it. Got it. And then how did you get into real estate law as opposed to other aspects of the law?
It's not, well, the thing is, when you're practicing in a rural area, you have to do all elements of law typically, right? So I started out doing everything, the criminal, the civil, so that was court work and chamber work. Right. However, later on, I realized that I wanted to be more in chambers. And the thing is, mediation came into my life at a certain point, and I realized that, some of the matters in court, can be settled amicably. Therefore, that sort of gave me, I wouldn't say an intolerance for the court, but made me see that, listen, I can make a contribution by virtue of being in chambers and helping people come to agreements and settle their matters outside a court, and basically thereby assisting the court in lessening their load.
Yeah.
So as a result of a number of other factors, I just decided, something, I'm going to stay in chambers and just dedicate myself to chamber work, which means conveyancing, probate, insurance matters, contract matters, nothing that takes me outside of the office. And I find that, it's satisfying because you have more time to, attend to the matters that your clients need you to attend to. It's a juggling with going to court and, being in chambers, because court is time consuming. So I just made a decision that, I want to be able to just apply myself fully to the chamber matters.
Okay.
So it wasn't really like real estate law, a decision to do real estate law, because I always did real estate law even while I was doing court work.
I see.
But, over the years, life has seasons, and, sometimes, your season is over. I believe my season was over there, and I'm able to make, a contribution fully in the chambers.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah.
And so now, this is kind of the first time that I'm doing this, that I put out to my subscribers the opportunity to ask questions, because I told them that we were going to be having a sit down, and I wanted to go over some of those questions with you. And so the way, and this is for the benefit of everybody watching out there, just to kind of give a breakdown of kind of the questions. So just to start off with just some basic real estate questions about just understanding the process, and then we'll get into some land specific questions and a few, I guess you could call them, I'll put them in the same, I was going to call them tax questions, but I would put them in the same under the same umbrella as land questions. And then right to information. And like the most questions I got was all about real estate attorneys in general. And like I said earlier, is really stemmed from people having very bad experiences in the past and hearing horror stories. So that's the lion's share of questions. So that's kind of the agenda that we'll go with. So to start off with, we have Shayna Love Coaching asked, what documents are required or needed to begin the process of real estate ownership? And also Rachel A pretty much asked the same question.
Okay, so basically what the most important thing that one needs when they're living overseas and they're interested in purchasing property in Jamaica is a tax registration number, okay? And you don't need to be a Jamaican citizen to obtain a tax registration number. I can go to the tax office for you and get your tax registration number within a few minutes. But that's the first thing. And it's almost tantamount to a social security number in the States, right? And whatever you're doing with land, you will need it. So even if you're doing the probate of a will and estate, you need a tax registration number. So they call it the TRN number for short. So you would need a TRN number that you can apply for online by going to the tax website, Tax Jamaica online, and go to the section for application for TRN number, download the form, fill it out, have a notary public, witness your signature. You will also need to obtain a certified copy of a photo ID, passport or driver's license, current, right? And at times, the tax office will ask for authorization to have the attorney apply for you. So the attorney would have to send you a form, and you fill that out and also have that notarized. Once that is done, you send it to the attorney. They'll go to the tax office and obtain the tax registration number for you. So it might seem prohibitive to some people. Oh, how am I going to get this tax registration number? It's very simple. So you need a tax registration number. Attorneys will ask of purchasers source of funds, right? That's important. Now, if you're getting a mortgage in Jamaica, it's obvious where most of your source of funds will be. However, if it's coming from savings or, an investment of some kind, salary, whatever, inheritance, the attorneys are going to require proof of where the funds are coming from. And then basically your ID and something to instruct the counsel as to, the fact that you want them to represent you. There is not much, in terms of documentation per se. It's things that you can have at your fingertips. We may require proof of address overseas, which would mean that we need your utility information, just to say that the address you have provided that's on your driver's license is in keeping with your utility address and so forth. So that's basically what you would need. Persons tend to think that if they're overseas and they are retaining counsel in Jamaica, they need to come down to Jamaica to sign documents and so on. Not at all. We send everything by courier. You get it signed before a notary. You send it back to us. You can purchase property in Jamaica without even being here. I am not suggesting you do that because you need to know what you're buying. Right? And that's another thing, because there are many people who will come, who will basically contact you and say they are going through a realtor and they are purchasing this piece of property. They've seen it on the website and it's great. And then I will say, you need to come and look at it, because there are times where you imagine certain things, and when you walk that property, you find things that are just not what you have in mind. There might be a big boulder that can't be removed. It might be a piece of land that's very, like, it's morass laden, and those things you can't see on the website. So it is important to come and see what you are buying, you know, because it's a big investment you're making. It is key that you see what you're buying.
I think that's sound
Yeah,
advice.
yeah.
And
So that's really, you know, the important thing. But it can be done from online, just online and speaking with your counselor and, you know, making the payments, wire transfers, and you can own your property quite easily.
I think that was, I mean, you hit on quite a number of things there, but that was one of the concerns that a lot of people had is like, can I do this while still being in the comfort of my home? And being
yeah.
Okay.
You don't need to come to sign anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Very good to know. Another question from Shayna Love Coaching. Can you explain the difference between, or differentiate the process between attaining residential versus commercial real estate?
Same process.
Okay. Are there also from Shayna Love Coaching, are there different property tax laws for each parish, or is it all the same?
No, it's the same. It's the same. So property tax laws, I'm not too sure what she means by that, but every property must pay taxes, right? Every owner of property rather must pay taxes. And the tax you pay is on the unimproved value of the property. Okay? And in Jamaica, you will always get a tax receipt. When you pay, you'll get a receipt and it will indicate the unimproved value.
And unimproved value means like no construction.
Just the land.
Okay.
Just the land, right? And that is what you pay your taxes on. Now, the thing about it is the values are not very current. And the reason I say that is because clients who are purchasing lands that are unoccupied, they don't have anything on there, it's vacant. Vacant lands, when you lodge your sale agreement or your sale agreement to the stamp office with the tax receipt, if the tax receipt says $1 million, the tax office will not charge taxes or calculate the transfer tax on the million. They will calculate the transfer tax on 2 or 3 million, which says to me that the unimproved value as it stands now is not current. So you're paying the property tax though to answer on the unimproved value, right? And it's the same across the board, every parish.
And are they doing that they would do that even if you had, say, a new land surveyor and came in and revalued the property?
No, the valuator. You mean a valuator? Right. The valuator. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So no, if the valuator comes in now and says this is not really 1 million as on the tax receipt, but this is 3 million, and you submit that valuation to the stamp office for assessment, they'll accept that value. Okay. They're going to accept the current value, because a valuator is really to give you the current market value, and you use a valuator mostly when you're taking out a mortgage, right? Because the banks need to know what they're getting into, right? But valuators are also used for estate purposes to determine the value of the estate at the date of death, because you're going to be calculating taxes, death duties on that. So you use the valuator for that purpose. So they will never, basically, they shouldn't undervalue. They basically want to get the current market value for the client.
Okay, that makes sense. Tia Jones asks, if you inherit property in Jamaica, what are the steps and cost of getting the title changed to your name?
All right, so that's very broad, because inherit land in Jamaica, a lot of people, you know, if they've been living on land forever and their father owned it, he may not have a title, but they figure, okay, I've inherited this. That's not 100% correct. It's how you inherited it. Now, if she inherited it by virtue of a will, and the father left or the mother left or somebody left a registered title, then you would probate the will, okay? And then you would be able to obtain the property. You will have it put in your name. It's a process, right? So in Jamaica, if you leave a will, right, you probate the will. If the person doesn't leave a will, right, the government under the Interstate Estates Property Charges Act basically dictates how the property will be distributed. So for instance, your father dies, right? In your mind, you inherited his estate.
Right.
But you have 3 siblings, and he left a wife.
Mm-hmm.
So under the Interstates Act, you basically would have to be willing to share, right? So the question I say, it's very broad. You have to really, you have to really find out the details.
Right.
But just for people to know that, without a will, you can also deal with the estate on the estates, under the Interstate Estates Administration Act. But the thing is that it's different, because if the person dies and doesn't want X to inherit anything, it may be that X is going to inherit under that law. That's why it's important to leave a will. But if her father left a will, it would be probated. It would mean that you have to pay costs to the attorney to have that done. Attorneys vary in terms of what they charge. They can charge from anywhere from 3 to 8% on the current market value of their estate.
Excuse me.
Right. So if it is that daddy dies in 1986, right, the attorney will be charging his fees on what daddy's property is worth in 2022.
Wow.
Okay? Mm-hmm. But the death duties that are paid on the estate is at the date of death. So she would be faced with paying death duties 1.5% on the value of the property at the date of death. But then the attorney's fees, properly speaking, should be on the current market value. So if the value in 86 was 3 million, and now it is 10 million. Those are the costs you'll be looking at. The attorney's costs on current market value, death duties of 1.5% on the current market, on the estate.
And this, sorry.
That's okay.
And this is irrespective of if you have a will or not.
Irrespective if you have a will or not. So because death duties are paid whether you have a will or not, right? And I think that's the same in any country.
Right.
Once you have to pay death duties, right? And the process is it is basically the same, because if you go by LA, the documents have to be drafted more or less the same way, in a sense where the Supreme Court will be the ones who will formalize this application, either for probate or letters of administration. So those 2 processes, at the end of the day, you're ending up paying 1.5% death duty and also attorney's fees. If there's a title, you'll have to pay registration and transmission fees, because if the will is probated, taxes are paid, then you would be going to the titles office to ask the registrar of titles to place the names of the executors on there for them to then transfer to the beneficiaries. And there's a fee of $6,000 for registration and transmission. Mm-hmm. Now, attorneys will also charge for the registration and transmission because it's a separate process. Some attorneys, they will charge the same 3 to 8% on that aspect of it. Others will just charge a flat rate. So, in terms of answering the question, death duty is 1.5, whether will or not, attorney's fees, registration fees.
Got it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the cost aside, but it sounds like there's a lot of merit in preparing before those sorts of inevitabilities, and obviously very tough conversations to have, but it seems like it could be a even tougher situation if you don't prepare beforehand.
Yeah. Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure. And I don't know if it's all persons, but I know Jamaican people, you don't want to go to your father, your mother and say, look, you need to make a will, because then they're going to say, I'm going to die tomorrow, because you brought up that subject. But it is so important.
Yes.
It is so important, because it allows an easier passage for the family upon the death, because at least okay, well, he put everything is provided for in the will, so everybody knows what everybody is to get, and it makes it easier. When you don't leave a will, everybody's going to be scurrying and fighting, but thankfully the law provides and speaks to that, in terms of if there's a wife and children, what they're to get and their shares. If there's no wife, the children, and then brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts, and down the line. So that's important, to really just provide for that situation, because we all know we're not here forever.
Right.
So that's very helpful. And And also, when making a will, it's important as well to get legal advice. You know, we have something in Jamaica where we have a will form, and we can go to a bookstore and we can buy a will form, and the instructions are there. But I find that sometimes people, they'll bring the wills that are made on the will forms to me once the person has passed. And you see certain things there that can invalidate it.
Okay.
And if it's invalidated, you go by letters of administration. So it's always key to get counsel's advice. If you even want to do the will form and take it to an attorney and say, okay, is this done properly? You know, is it, the dates have to be there, the witnesses, etc. Also, you know, people will do the will forms and they will make out, you know, I'm going to give Tom Brown 2 acres of my land. And then they go, no, it's all right, I'm crossing it out. I'm giving, you know, Dawn Gray 2 acres. They cross it, they just make the changes, they don't initial. Mm-hmm. That's not going to fly with the Supreme Court. So you have to make sure these little things, you need to make sure initial adjustments, you know, both people have to be present at the same time when they're witnessing the will. You have to leave that information there, because I find sometimes with wills, they'll have witnesses and they'll say, you know, Joyce Grant of Darliston and another witness. And it's just like their little district. And when it comes to find them upon the death to assist with the probate, they can't be found because, you know, Joyce Grant in Darliston, sometimes if the children live overseas, they're not familiar with, you know, the community and so on. Right. So it's important. I basically indicate now, like, make sure you print out everything and leave a number at the end so that we, you know, you can be contacted when that time comes. Mm-hmm. So there are just little things there that, you know, yes, you raise the point. It's important to leave a will. Not only that, but it needs to be a will that's valid. Yeah. You know, so don't take comfort in the fact that you've written out everything and that's it, because the law has certain requirements that need to be met in order to probate a will.
I think that is sound advice that hopefully people adhere to and listen to and not go through. You know, make a really sad and emotional situation worse.
Exactly.
So now moving on to some land and tax questions. Okay. So this one is from Miss Perfectly Imperfect. How do you find out who has the legal title to land property?
Okay, so basically you will have to have a volume and folio number if you're talking about legal title, because that's a term that, you know, is up for interpretation. Legal title in this jurisdiction means a registered title. And you can find the owner of land for a registered title by virtue of obtaining either the volume and folio number, or if you have a property tax receipt, there's a valuation number on there, and you can go to the National Land Agency website and search for either through the volume and folio number or through the valuation number to be able to obtain information as to who the rightful owner is. That's with registered land. Now, if the land is unregistered, you know, a number of scenarios can play out. So it depends, you know, because you can have somebody come to you and say, I'm the owner of this land. You can't just, on the face of it, take it that he's the owner. He would have to be paying taxes, so you would still ask for a tax receipt. And 9 times out of 10, his name may not be on there as the owner. It might have been his father, or it might have been an uncle, or some stranger. That's basically a red flag for you to say, okay, your name isn't here, why isn't it here? And, you know, they might go into an explanation, but it is imperative that you establish from that person exactly how he came into ownership, because he may be a tenant leasing the property. So, you know, all of these questions would have to be asked, because by right, he should be able to provide a tax receipt or a survey diagram or a deed or something to show that he owns the property. So, you know, it is basically through the LLA, and if it is not registered, it would just have to be the purchaser making certain checks as far as they possibly can to find out whether or not this person is in fact the owner of the property.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Another question from Miss Perfectly Imperfect. What is the recourse if you have purchased land without your knowledge through a third party without the owner's consent? Same question if someone has sold your land unknowingly. And so this is a little bit of a not so straightforward question. And so I'd rather ask this question in a way to use an example. And we were talking about an earlier example of somebody purchasing land from somebody that actually doesn't own the land.
Yeah. Right. So, all right. So it's important, right, for people living overseas to do the same due diligence and go through the same processes they would go through it as where they live. So in other words, you live in the States, if you're going to buy property, you go through an attorney to make the relevant checks and to basically make sure your interests are protected. People who want to buy land in Jamaica, they are to do the exact same thing. Because you come here, you enjoy the sea, you enjoy the sand, and you think it's wonderful, you're on vacation, and you go onto a property and you meet someone, right? I had a situation where I had a client who did the same thing. Enjoy Jamaica, met this person on the property, and the person says, listen, I have this land for sale. This is, I can sell this to you. And the client says, sure, let's do something about it. The client comes to me and he says, Mrs. Gray, I want to buy this property from this gentleman here. And I said, okay, so let's see the title. He says, oh, yes, he has the title. So the client showed me the title. The name was not the same name as the person who was proposing to sell him the property. So I had to advise the client that, listen, this is not the owner. You can't give him any money and he cannot sell the property, right? So it's very important that you make sure you check these things out. Because also, Jamaican people are warm people, all right? They're wonderful people, right? But at the same time, just like anyone else, you have to ensure that, listen, I need proof. I need the documentation. I need something. You just can't take somebody's word for it. And similarly, you have to be careful as well online, with properties being advertised and so on. You have to be extremely careful how you go about purchasing from persons who are, they have a nice website and it looks good, because 9 times out of 10, you can be in a situation where it isn't all that you see there. So it's really important that you get counsel, or you make sure you find out as much as possible as you can about the title and the history of it. So to answer the question, you legally have a duty to ensure that the person you're purchasing it from really owns it at the end of the day. And that means making sure that they have everything that they're supposed to have. And also the thing is that the attorneys are important in this regard, because of experience that attorneys have, they can see through things quickly, and they can know, okay, hold on, no, this man can't own this man because of X, Y, Z, right? So it's best you don't go and, put any monies down or anything like that. Another thing is that people tend to do that as well. They deal with the persons one-on-one, and they would have paid money to the quote unquote vendor, and at the end of the day, they can't see a title forthcoming or anything like that. And then they come to the attorney afterwards and say, I've paid all this money, and then it turns out that the person didn't own the land, or the person cannot complete title to transfer to you. So it's not a difficult process to own property in Jamaica, but you have to be wise.
Right.
You have to exercise wisdom, and you can't deal with our warm and lovely people. Deal with their attorneys. Just deal with their attorneys, and you'll be safe. And you'll be protected. That's the important thing.
No, I think that's sound advice. And as I was on the live stream and we were getting these questions, like you could tell, like a lot of these questions are coming from places of either direct poor experiences that they've had, or through experiences of people that they know. And hopefully they've learned their lessons one way or another, and they are doing what I would consider, like you said, the wise thing to do is have professionals deal with this and make sure that you don't get screwed in the end.
Because if that happens, the recourse is court, and that's the end of the day. At the end of the day, and the court situation is a long process, right? It's a costly process, right? And you may not get judgment in your favor because you might have just not exercised enough wisdom. And, so that's one of the things that persons overseas need to be aware of. You have to be careful.
And when you say long process, we're not talking weeks or months here.
No. We're talking matters now in 2022 for trial are being set for maybe 2026, 2027 for trial.
Gosh.
For trial. Right? And that's being kind. So so in other words, you don't want that recourse. This person is asking, what's my recourse? If, don't make sure you don't have to go that route, right? Make sure you can basically purchase in a manner where your interests are protected. All the lights are on green, and you can go ahead and basically at the end of the day become a landowner,
right? A
legal landowner, right? Yeah.
Man, yeah, that is so scary to me to have to think to start the trial in 4 or 5 years from now.
No. It's important because people come to me all the time having entered into agreements, right? Some of them even drafted by the vendors, quote unquote, the vendors themselves. Money's paid down, right? And they can't get their titles. And, I always say, is this what you would have done in the US? No. So don't do it here, right? Don't do it here. I mean, most people like the easy way out. They don't want to go through counsel, but at the end of the day, it's best you do.
Yeah,
it's best you do.
A really, really harsh price. Okay, moving on to the next subject area. Let's move into the right to information. And so T asks, can a citizen of Jamaica freely look up who owns a residential property? For example, if I see a piece of land or a vacant home that isn't for sale, how can I find out who owns it? And second to that, do I need a lawyer to obtain that information?
On the face of it, I would say, all right, you see a piece of land and you want to know who owns it, ask the neighbor, ask the adjoining owner. Because there's no way for you without more to find out, right? You would need a tax receipt or a volume and folio number. You'd need a name, something. So it's not that you can just go on a website and this piece of land comes up out of nowhere.
Right.
So it would have to be that you would ask, around to get some information. The person may be overseas. So then you would just probably, I don't know, maybe go on Facebook and find out. It's possible. There's so many avenues these days.
Right.
I would go out on a limb and say perhaps the National Land Agency, you could approach them if you were able to give them specifics as to the location. I know that there are times where they have the maps that they can bring up and perhaps assist in terms of identifying. But at best, it would be to just ask a neighbor. A lawyer, to assist with that process, the lawyer would be saying exactly what I'm saying now,
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Makes sense. This is from Ocean Gray. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that there is no lien on the property?
That's a responsibility, I would say, of both counsel. First of all, if I am selling property for someone, I would ask them for the title, the registered title. If they say, Mrs. Gray, the bank has it, okay. That doesn't mean they can't sell. It just means that we're going to have to clear that mortgage one way or the other before we pass it on to the purchaser, okay? So it's the vendor's responsibility, the vendor's attorney's responsibility to ensure that that mortgage is cleared. So there are times where I'm representing the purchaser. I do a title search. I see that there's a mortgage, but I know that the lawyer on the other side can't pass it to my client until it's cleared. So, But also, it's also my responsibility, seeing that mortgage, to indicate to counsel, okay, I see a mortgage on there. What arrangements are being made to clear it? It may be that the purchaser is applying for a mortgage as well. So then the mortgage companies get involved, because whatever the proceeds are, then the mortgage will be paid off from those proceeds before it's passed to the purchaser. So both parties really, their counsel, it's their responsibility to ensure that, one, the title is free and clear. Two, if it's not, to ensure that it is clear, it is free and clear by paying off the mortgage.
Okay.
There are times where you have to do a title search to ensure that there are no caveats. This is another thing. As a caveat is a lien, in a sense. And, that again is also the responsibility of the vendor's attorney to ensure that that caveat is removed for whatever reason that it is placed on the title.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. Okay, now moving into the attorney-specific questions. This one is from Camille Lewis, and she asks, why is it crucial to use an attorney? Is there an event where a customer may not need an attorney, and what are the rates?
Okay, so just like we were saying earlier, it's important to have counsel to represent you. Why? Because your interests are protected. All right, so there's so many things that can go wrong in a sale. All right, your money, you don't use an attorney and you pay the monies. For instance, if you're going to be dealing with someone one-on-one, none of you have counsel. That's the most dangerous situation you could ever put yourself in, right? Because you're going to pay money to this person who is then going to spend it. And then when he cannot give you a title, right, he has no money to refund you, right? So it's important for counsel, because even as a purchaser, I would then be able to say to this vendor, listen, you need to give me a title, produce a title, show me exactly whether or not you've been paying the taxes, whether or not anybody is entitled to the property. These are the things that we would be asking on your behalf to ensure that at the end of the day, you can have land transferred to you safely and without any extra expense. So it is important to have counsel to represent your interest. We also are able to, deal with counsel on the other side. There may be situations where there are terms in the contract which are not going to be too beneficial to you and will put you at a disadvantage. It is for us to look at that and say, well, listen, we're going to speak to the vendor's attorney. Can he adjust this? Can he change this? So those are the reasons, really. Because at the end of the day, counsel, if you're dealing with an attorney and that attorney is dealing with another attorney, there is an understanding that there is a responsibility to ensure that the matter goes through, right, and goes through correctly. Yep. So that's one of the reasons why that's the reason you need an attorney. Yeah. It's basically just simply to protect you, because you may think you know everything about a sale, but there are other things that can be involved, and so it's that important, especially also if you're taking out a mortgage. You definitely will need an attorney. Mm-hmm. If you're taking out a mortgage, that's important.
Will the bank work with you if you don't have an attorney?
Not if you're taking out a mortgage.
Right.
No. Right. So you'd have to have counsel.
And what would be the attorney's rates?
Attorney's rates vary.
Mm-hmm.
To represent the purchaser, normally it can range from 2% to 5%. Mm-hmm. To represent vendor, it can range from 3% to 5% or more. Those are the fees. I mean, there are other costs involved to prepare the agreement for sale, miscellaneous costs, and of course, the stamp duty that is purchaser's responsibility, half registration fees. So there are a number of costs involved as well, separate and apart from the attorney's fee.
Okay, this question is from Brenda Brown, and she asks, if multiple individuals own property and all are in agreement to sell, should they seek their own attorney or use one for all involved?
Okay, if they're joint owners, it's one attorney. You can use one attorney. That one attorney would have to basically get instructions from everyone. Well, of course, everybody's going to sign the sale agreement. Everybody's going to sign the transfer, right? So basically, you can use one attorney. At the end of the day, now, it's important to instruct the attorney as to how the proceeds are to be distributed. Joint tenancy is equal ownership, all right, so to speak. But if there's any reason why you would want more of the funds going to one joint tenant as opposed to the other, that has to be written out in instructions to the attorney so that he can ensure that once it's distributed, it's being distributed and everybody's in agreement with how it's done. But you just need one attorney. It doesn't really make sense to have separate attorneys because at the end of the day, it's one land being transferred. It's one set of fees, etc. So it is just important to use one attorney.
Okay. All right. This question is from Kay with 3 Y's and an exclamation point.
Okay.
If it is a well-established developer, gated community, is it okay not to use an attorney?
No, it's not okay. Everybody needs an attorney when they're purchasing property. There are no exceptions. A developer, it's even more important because a developer has a great responsibility, right, in terms of completing the development, right? And there are times where it can't be completed for one reason or the other. You have put a down payment. Okay. Yes, the agreement may say how the monies are to go at the end if he cannot complete. But for you to basically access a refund, it's going to be more difficult for you to do so on your own as opposed to having representation, right? The developer is to have his attorney, the purchaser is to have their attorney. And therefore, the correspondences are between both counsel. And the thing is, as I said before, if there's any reason for the sale to fall through, your interest is going to be protected because if a deposit has been paid and the agreement stamped, the developer's attorney is going to have to return it to the purchaser. The purchaser is then going to have to go to obtain a refund from the Ministry of Finance because the monies have already been paid out to the government, right? For a purchaser who is living overseas to get that back, it would be a nightmare. They wouldn't know where to start. However, your attorney would know exactly what to do and how to get the monies back on your behalf. So, attorneys are important, especially when you're purchasing the properties because anything can take place which will work against your interest. Mm-hmm. So you have to, whether it's a developer or not, you don't get carried away by what's on the website, the wonderful gate and the big sign and everything looks so great. The documents seem to be in order. Let me just sign. Use an attorney to ensure that the developer completes on time. If he's not completing on time, you can be given a reason for that, whether it's valid. Then, your attorney can say, well, this is a valid reason and we need to just wait. So the attorney is really the go-to person for you to be able to inform you as to exactly what are the intricacies of this transaction, why it might be delayed, what do we do? Do we just be patient? So it's important for representation.
No, I think that's, again, more sound advice, and we've all heard of these nightmare stories that you didn't use professionals and you find yourself in a really, really poor position.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting good counsel, Shayna Love Coaching asks, what are the criteria/characteristics to look for in a high quality real estate attorney? And a few more people asked
the same thing.
Question, yeah.
There are no qualities. I mean, it's not that you have one of the first things you can do. Let me just take it from this standpoint. You can ensure that the attorney is in good standing with the General Legal Counsel. All right. So you can go on the General Legal Counsel website and you can see the list of attorneys that are there, right? Those that are listed that are in good standing, that means that those attorneys are basically filing their accounts with the JLC every year, and everything is in order in terms of how the client's monies are being dealt with, right? As well as they have paid up their fees their licensing fees. So, that's the first thing you can do to ensure that whoever you're considering is legally able to practice in Jamaica and is in good standing, right? Now, the next thing is how to determine the characteristics. It's really going to be a personal decision for you, right? But one of the things you look for is, does this attorney take the time to explain everything to me about the process? Because sometimes there are things that, some attorneys basically deal with it from the standpoint of, okay, this is, you're going to be purchasing, this is these are the fees, da 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 da. But they don't explain the process to you in detail, or you may have some concerns or questions. They may be way out there, but you still want them answered for your own benefit. This attorney, is he willing to take the time to answer all your questions, to explain the process to you? That's something you look for. Is the attorney accessible? Is he able to take my calls when I call him? Right? That's not a license to call the attorney every time you have a thought and you want to know exactly, right? But, is he going to take your calls? And also, does he or she keep you up to date with what is taking place with the sale, right? It's also important. I know that persons can't, if they're living overseas, it's going to be phone or email. But if you come to the country, any at all, to look at the property, visit the attorney, because there's sometimes where people, they're back overseas, and Mrs. Gray, I was here last week, and I'm like, you were here last week, why don't you just pop into the office and let me meet you, or, because that also helps.
Yes.
You see, because when you're basically just dealing with written words on a screen, you can't determine exactly whether or not this person is going to fully represent your interests to the best, because anything can take place. You have no way of knowing. So I can't really fully answer that question, to be honest with you. I can't say, well, okay, if this is the characteristics of the attorney, then you're good to go. Mm-hmm. No, because I can't speak for everybody else. But what I can say is that the attorneys must have your interest at heart and know that they work for you. And as a result of that, they must be willing to give you the time, answer your questions, keep you updated as to the matter. And also, if you're not hearing from the attorney, reach out to them and say, what is the position? Has this been done yet? Has that been done yet? Right? And if you find that you cannot get a straight answer, then perhaps you might have to say, okay, well, maybe this is not the right person for me, right? So you have to use your discretion.
Right.
You have to use your discretion, because there's no, magic ball that you can look in and say, okay, this is going to be fine. I'm going to be okay. So basically, I know there's a distrust with many, many people, especially overseas, where counsel is involved. And yes, there are times where, you hear things about attorneys, but it's not all attorneys. And, the General Legal Counsel has been doing their utmost best to put strategies in place to ensure that monies are dealt with the way, properly, and that the client's money is protected and so on. That is why every year we have to file accounts with the GLC, with certified accountants who can indicate to the GLC, well, based on what has gone in and what has come out, this attorney has done all they're supposed to do, in terms of clients' funds. So we have that is also there that can help, right? But I can't really say at the end of the day what an attorney will do. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be able to fully assure anybody. But at the end of at best, ensure that this person, you're satisfied with them. Right. You're satisfied with them at the end of the day, how they're dealing with everything. You're satisfied.
Oh, I think that's a great starting point for anybody looking for an attorney. I think that's great advice. And like you said, nobody has a crystal ball. You can't really know. You just have to really go through those fundamentals, and at the end of the day, use your best judgment.
Use your best judgment, yeah.
And so last question is kind of on the opposite end, and this is, from Kay again, and she asks, who do you turn to when the attorney violates the law and legal ethics? In the U.S., we have the Bar Association. Who do we have here to turn
General
to?
Legal Counsel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they're asking, like, so if you have an attorney that you started doing business with, using their services, and for whatever reason, they either did something that is either unethical or they just didn't really come through for you, you being the client, what sort of recourse options do you have?
Well, communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times where persons will come to me having used another attorney and they want to switch.
Yes.
Why do you want to change counsel? Well, my matter is taking too long. Okay? And right away, well, first of all, I don't take matters from counsel. So I will always just try to establish from them what exactly has the attorney not done for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will say, listen, you need to go and ask for a meeting with the attorney and determine where he is with your matter, what's left to be done. Because it's communication. There are times where, for whatever reason, the client may not be told, you're going to need to send these fees to get this done. Or if they're told, they may not respond right away, and then the attorney basically is not going to be running them down for it. Once they have put out something, I'm waiting on this to complete that, right? So that's one scenario. It might be that it's just not going along as quickly as you expected. And there are a variety of reasons why that would be the case, right? And it's not counsel's fault, right? It's not counsel's fault. So for instance, divorces. Americans can go to Las Vegas and they can get a divorce instantly, pretty much. In Jamaica, at least a year for a divorce, okay? And therefore, when their divorce is taking a little bit over a year, they're saying, well, counsel isn't doing anything. But the thing is, everything is done by the Supreme Court in Jamaica. There's one Supreme Court in Jamaica. There are 14 parishes. The one Supreme Court is dealing with all the couples that, no longer want to live together. So it takes time. It's a process, right? So, that's just one of the examples. In Jamaica, things can take time. I'm not excusing anything, but what I'm saying is that you need to know that the time that it's taking is valid. All right? There are times where, no, it can't take 5 years to probate a will. All right? So therefore, that's something that you would have to basically get advice as to how do I get this attorney to do his job, right? But if it is, as I said, it's going to depend on it. I'm not going to be telling anybody today to go and rush to the GLC to report an attorney because their matter is taking longer than, it needs to take. Because, as I said, there are factors involved in any transaction which is out of the hands of the attorney. You're dealing with a sale, the attorney has lodged the documents at the stamp office. The stamp office can take 6 weeks, they can take longer than 6 weeks. Because sometimes they have to go out and visit the property, and they're not coming to Westmoreland unless they have several matters, right? Several properties to look at in Westmoreland, and that may take time because there are very few assessors. Everything is understaffed. No, so it's really important to know that go to the attorney first, see exactly what the reason is for the delay, right? Because you may be just jumping the gun and it's not within his control, right? Unethical, no, I really don't know what that person means by unethical, because sometimes people just get upset that you're not responding to their numerous emails that are sent daily, twice, 3 times a day. Sometimes we just can't respond.
Right.
You understand, to so many things. So, there is recourse. It is the general legal counsel, but communication with your attorney is key. Communication, because there are clients where you have to they're getting uptight. Once you sit them down and you explain to them and you show them what is happening, And sometimes they're at fault. They were tired in giving you certain things, so you had to sit and wait on it, but they don't remember that.
Right.
They just know that, okay, they want their matter done like yesterday. So that happens all the time. I've been in practice 26 years. I know this is how it plays out. So, so that's basically that communication at the end of the day.
Oh, another sound piece of advice right there. Sound piece of advice. And I just also want to thank you for answering all those questions that everybody asked. I know I learned so much today, not only about you personally, but also about many aspects of the legal process when it comes to purchasing real estate. If people are interested in hiring and using your services, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can call me, right? 876-918-0494. Or my email address is d.p.gray@cwjamaica.com.
Okay,
Yeah,
excellent. Thank you all out there for your wonderful questions today. And once again, thank you, Ms. Gray, for
Thanks for
joining
having
us.
me. Thanks very much for having me.